The government of Uganda is set to reclaim control of the country's electricity distribution network as the 20-year concession agreement with Umeme Limited comes to an end on March 31st, 2025. The transition will be managed by the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, EDCL, a state-owned entity tasked with ensuring uninterrupted power supply and improving efficiency in electricity distribution. The decision to take over the distribution network aligns with the government's broader strategy to enhance service delivery, reduce electricity costs, and ensure greater public sector control over the critical infrastructure. This move is expected to provide Ugandans with more reliable and affordable electricity while addressing past inefficiencies in the sector. With the deadline fast approaching, concerns have been raised about the preparedness of EDCL to take over the operations seamlessly. Among the key issues of concern are workforce transition, infrastructure management, financial commitments, and consumer service continuity. Welcome to The Brief this week. My name is Vivian Kamsime. You have been in the process of exiting the Ugandan market since 2022. What has that process of leaving the market been like?
We've had a lot of preparations. Like I said, some people would think that once you're given a job, you'd have to work until you drop dead. But like I said, this was a project which we knew about. It was strictly for 20 years. And what the concession agreements indicate was that this journey, you would either get terminated if you didn't perform according to government expectations. But if you performed, you would be allowed that the concession goes up to its natural end, which is the case in this particular one. So we are happy that government supported us and all those other partners, and we started to prepare for the retransfer of the assets, because we are running the network on behalf of government of Uganda. And once we got notification that government was not going to give any extension but would rather allow the concession to go up to the end, we started to prepare, working hand in hand with the regulator of the sector, with the ministry, and also with other partners, especially the company that is taking over. So we have been working together to prepare all this. We've, as Umeme, we are a highly technological business, because most of our services are actually online. That's why we no longer deliver hard paper bills. That's why we no longer visit to come and read your meter. Everything is online. So we invested in technology, and almost everything is on cloud. So we've been working to ensure that we prepare all these systems for the person who is, or for the entity that is taking over. So it's a journey that we are not just bumping into. We planned for it. We have worked all through together with all these particular partners, and we are here working up to the last day, up to the last hour, up to the last minute, up to the last second. So on 31st of March 2025, we will be happy to actually give back to government what belongs to government.
Can you provide an overview of the government's decision to take over electricity distribution from Umeme Limited?
So government made a general decision to cost cut for so many reasons. Cutting down on debt, also funding has been pulled back. In general, ever since we took our stance on homosexuality, you saw a lot of people started pulling away from us. Then COVID came with its challenges. Most development partners reprioritized how they fund us. Also, there are sectors where funders have pulled out of, but also the privatization process that government undertook so many years ago. In hindsight, we realized some mistakes were made. Maybe some sensitive areas should have never been privatized because of the initial cost of investment, energy being one of those. The cost of generating power, the cost of transmitting, but also these things in a way have some security sensitivities where government needs to come in more and monitor these aspects. So distribution as well, for instance, electrification of rural areas. An investor like Umeme, for instance, to be specific, found those places unviable, and that's how EDCL, that people think don't have capacity, started to take up these concessions. Uganda split the country, government split the country into 13 service territories, where we've had different service providers, but because Umeme is in the central, had a bigger chunk, the lucrative chunk, many people seem to only speak about Umeme. But we had, for instance, Budibuja Electricity Cooperative Society, we had Padera Beam called Parkmex, Distribution Electricity Cooperative Society. We've had Wenreko in West Nile, which is still there. We've had KIS, Kalangala Infrastructure Services. We've got EDCL operating in some services. We had FADSALT that used to operate in Chibale, Kanungu. Now, government started by now claiming back, whenever we used to give them 10-year concessions, they had to hand over back to government. And which government is responsible for distribution is EDCL, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company. So they have experience in distribution. By the way, they are the ones who handed over to Umeme. Those assets belong to government, overseen by EDCL. The contract that we are talking about is signed between Umeme and EDCL. Just the additional contract that was signed with finance for those financial aspects, but the major contract is actually with EDCL that ended, and we are in the transition period that ends on, the original contracts actually ended in February. Then we have this transition period that ends on 31st of March.
There is a buyout sum that government must pay to take over Umeme. What does the buyout sum include?
What people have termed the buyout, buyout actually sounds a very heavy word, but the model that Uganda runs is such that you get an entity from private sector to mobilize private sector capital, invest on the network, and then once people are consuming electricity, you recover that investment through the tariff. That is the model that we have been running over the last 20 years. And what it means is that there is money that we have recovered, but there is also money that is not yet recovered because of the investments that we are making and that we have made and also continue to invest. Because even right now, we are maintaining the network up to the last day. If your transformer blows, we'll not sit back and say, because we are leaving, we can't come and reinstall the transformer. So that is what people call the buyout. It is money that Umeme has invested and has not yet recovered. So that is money which is assessed. It is the mandate of the Auditor General to actually verify and assess that money. And so that process is ongoing. It is not yet done. We await the final number, and once that is done, then the modalities of getting that money paid to the beneficiary, which is Umeme, will be communicated by the government.
Cabinet approved the projection of the buyout amount at 190. Now that amount was approved subject to government audit procedures. Okay, I predicted that I might have to pay you so much for the agreed upon investment. But remember, when Umeme came on board, access to electricity in Uganda was just about 1%. But most of the increased access to over 23 has been because of government initiative to build the network and extend it further. Has Umeme done all that investment? No. It has done maybe the 1 kilometer max, 1 pole, 2 poles, and many times customers were told, if you can pay for yourself, pay, and we give you. So we have to offset all that. How much did we invest as government? How much did you invest as Umeme? Yes? There are some refurbishments that Umeme had to do. Did it do them? There are assets that we gave Umeme. For instance, we have a lot of substations around the country that had huge chunks of land. We have to go back and check. I gave you my 10 what? My 10 square meters, or 10 meters, or 1 acre, or 20 acres of land. You're giving me back half an acre, just where the substation is. Where is the rest of my land? You see, so this audit is to check all those things. Because of course we know that there's depreciation. For instance, cars that you gave them 20 years ago, maybe you wouldn't expect it back, yes? But my garage that I gave you, where is it? My land that I gave you, so that you operate, where is it? So we've got to offset ourselves. So there's that buyout amount approved by cabinet, because that was what government projected. But there's an audit process that the Auditor General has been doing, and that's why there's back and forth. Umeme is saying you owe me so much. Government is saying no, I have cut off this much because you have not done this. I've cut off this much because you've not brought back my this, and it costs so much. So those are the contentions. So it isn't that there's conflicting price, but in the process of handing back, it's like when a tenant leaves your house. Some people even ask you to pay a deposit, though ours was the other way around. And I check, are my windows still there? Is my tile broken? And things like that. So I'm only giving you back so much. So that's the kind of thing.
There is no doubt that Umeme has delivered on most of its expectations by government. But now, in these last days of her services, we are experiencing power outages throughout the country. What are you currently doing about the power outages?
Power outages are caused as a result of a number of functions. Sometimes it's because of faults, and some of these faults could be localized faults. And what we encourage people to do is you report your fault if you're off, because somebody may not have power and they will say we don't have power, and you go the other areas and it's only that person. So probably a fault on their meter. Then the other one would be as a result of vandalism, which we have found to be a major obstacle in delivering this service. But a lot has been done, because they vandalize the pylons that deliver power from the dams to us, and also they vandalize the poles that we use to deliver power to the communities. Sometimes it's the transformer failure, sometimes it's weather, sometimes it's vegetation. But what we do as a matter of assurance is to tell the public that we are available, we are committed, we are doing our work up to the very end. When you don't have power or service in your area, please call us or reach out to the service center near you. We'll be able to serve you.
Currently, some areas are experiencing power outages, and the Minister of Energy, Honorable Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa, has said that this will be resolved come 1st April 2025. How are you prepared to address this challenge?
First of all, there are things that we've been able to address, but there are things EDCL is unable to do right now because the network is still not in their hands. There are things that we've been asking Umeme, the simple ones. If it's just a cable that has fallen, Umeme should really be able to address that. But remember, they're injecting in fuel, their staff to go and address this. So there's a cost implication, which will be seen just in 13 days, what this means. EDCL, like I said earlier, has been operating concessions. They have transformers. You see, we have a generic specification over the Uganda network. There's a standard. So there might be one or two things that might differ, maybe just a software to read this or read the other. But in terms of the type of transformers, the standards cut across. So if there's an emergency in a place that was formerly run by Umeme, we can still pick a transformer from our stores and be able to serve that area. Government has provided meters. There are meters readily available to connect new consumers. So there are all these people on the waiting list that maybe they are not being connected. Now, EDCL should be able to connect them. But you know, many times people complain about being connected, but there are categories. There are people who have a readily available pole, which we call a low voltage pole that is ready to serve you, the user. But power might be passing near you, but there is no a step down transformer to serve you. So sometimes we complain, so many people on the waiting list, then we find there's even no network where you live. Maybe a kilometer or two away from an existing network. And the way Kampala is growing, or Uganda is growing, there's so many mushrooming neighborhoods. So we've got to look at which category you fall. But if you have a network near you, really, we shall come and connect you. We shall be able to provide that service.
You have said EDCL, Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited, is prepared to take over from Umeme. How are they prepared come 1st April 2025?
We are in a recruitment process that started earlier last month, where, as we speak, we've recruited over 900 staff. We kept it internal, not open to the public, between Umeme and EDCL staff to compete for the new positions in the new structure. So that's how we are preparing. Now, over these 900 people, most of them have come from Umeme, who know the network. We've been working on this, but now there'll be new staff and a new contract and a new terms. This is a new organization, not new per se, but in terms of this concession, they have a different structure. There's also technological improvement. So you don't have to have as many people as you had there. Because maybe now, instead of getting people to walk pole by pole when someone reports a fault, maybe remotely through the GPS and all this, I'm able to see where you are and I just drive directly there. So you might find those 1,000 people that are hired to be reading meter by meter are no longer necessary, because we are all using prepayment system, you see. You still need people for maintenance, but not as many as you had before. There was also a feeling of duplication. First of all, like I told you, EDCL has been a utility. It already has some of these positions. Why am I bringing someone Umeme? Where do I take this one? So what we do is that we subject them to an interview. Who is the better candidate? And the funny thing is that the energy sector feeds off itself. There aren't so many people in the energy sector. So you find someone leaves Ministry of Energy and joins a contractor, leaves the contractor, joins EDCL, joins transmission, joins Umeme. There are so many people who have moved between Umeme and EDCL over the years and have come to Ministry of Energy and have formed their own company. Then they move to transmission. It is the same group of people, the same ones that also Umeme has been using. So we expect to benefit from that manpower, that capacity built over years, and that is the readiness of EDCL. We have some standby equipment ready to operate, and the way we've done in other concessions, that at midnight on the day of handover, for you, a normal user, you will not even know that you've crossed interface. You retain your same meter number, you retain your same customer number, your network is exactly the same, your meter is exactly the same, unless there's a reason why we need to change it. So we won't even know, apart from the noise we are making, we won't even know that there is a change.
How is this change going to impact electricity consumers in Uganda?
For me, one of the first aspects, I think, is that along the way, we might see a slight drop in what we pay for power, the cost price. For instance, even already January, this process is starting, there was a small reduction. Of course, it's gradual because we need operational money and we need to reinvest in the network. But you see, there are monies we've been paying Umeme that government will not be paying itself. For instance, we've been paying Umeme what we call losses. You know, in the process of transmitting from generation to distribution, sometimes we technically lose power. But remember, there is a meter from where Umeme picks to start selling. So Umeme will see that I bought so much power, but I was only able to sell so much. Where did it get lost in the middle? It could be because of technical reasons, sometimes human. We are stealing power, those people who bypass meters and things like that. So there's been an arrangement in the concession agreement to pay for losses. Also, there's been an arrangement to refund. Now, part of this buyout amount we are talking about has to do with compensating Umeme for its investment in the network. But like I told you earlier, some of these investments were done by government itself because there's a lot more money required. So some of these new lines, distribution lines, has been built by government itself and then handed over to Umeme. So we don't expect Umeme to now make claims for such investments.
What are the implications of missing the deadline to pay this buyout sum?
If we don't meet the deadline, there's a possibility of paying slightly more than what we had planned. But the beauty is that we have a cabinet basket of that buyout amount. Right now, for us, our assessment is slightly less than that buyout amount. So if we exit by a day or two, we are still able to pay that amount. But the implication is that we have to pay more because there will be a surcharge each day that passes. But government has made its decision that we must hand over. And preparations have been made to avail funds. We've had a joint sector committee to prepare us for this transition. So you see, while the public feels that government is not ready, it's not everything you do in your house that your neighbor should know, that the public should know. So these processes of planning, of checking this, maybe it's too much information to bother the public with. But now that we need to give the reassurance, we have a cabinet committee, just so you know, that has been running for the last 2 years. We have a ministerial level committee where they oversee all the other CEOs, and then we have the joint technical committee at the operational level that has the engineers and things like that. All these teams meet every week just to discuss this, see where the gaps are, how do we address this, can we have this, and so on and so forth.
So there is a challenge of the buyout sum being determined by the Auditor General, in the sense that it's a moving sum. Even as we speak now, Umeme could be replacing transformers somewhere in areas in Uganda that have experienced power outages. How are you going to address that challenge in coming up with this buyout sum?
Part of the reason we are unable to declare the actual buyout amount is Umeme is still operating until the 31st of March, midnight. To run this network, you need operational funds. Now, for instance, the complaints people are talking about, a tree has fallen on the line, we're in a blackout, the transformer is blown. We also have an old network. Things are failing, yes? So, should Umeme address these issues, or should it wait? So, of course, we've got to factor that in, that you operated for these additional days, and this is what you invested. But of course, they had to cut back slowly. Which investment can you make, which one can't you make? So an operational one, for instance, if there's a complaint that Entebbe, which is one of the major places we've been getting complaints, does not have power. What is the actual reason? You know, sometimes it's very simplistic. Me as a user, I want power. I don't care about the other reasons, but there are so many reasons why there's an outage. Sometimes it's vandalism. Sometimes it's theft, maybe transformer oil, or some component has been stolen. Sometimes it's technology failure, the equipment fails, like any machinery. It fails, even your car, it can just suddenly stop in the middle of the road. So now, is that a part, it depends on the type of car you drive, is that a car that needs to be ordered from abroad, or it's available locally? Do I have, you're asking me about having transformers readily available in the store. It might be there, it might not. And the fact that they are rounding up, maybe it doesn't make sense to be buying new things and stocking.
Now that Umeme is exiting the market, what next for the company and the employees?
Umeme as a company is a registered company here in Uganda, and it is not closing. What is happening is that the company is only retransferring the assets that it has been running on behalf of government of Uganda back to government. Otherwise, the shareholders of the company will decide on the direction the company should take, whether to look into new business here, or to venture into other markets, or look into other businesses. Otherwise, as an entity, Umeme as a company still exists. And on behalf of staff, management of Umeme, like I said, we can only be grateful, we can only be happy for the opportunity that has been given to us to serve this country. Umeme employs over 3,200 people directly, and so many others through the multiplier effects, because we have contractors, we have all that. But we're happy that we are powering over 2.3 million homes, and we believe that there is more that this sector will build onto what has been achieved to ensure that we propel the energy sector or the electricity sector to the next level.
Umeme is a listed company on the Uganda Securities Exchange and cross-listed on the Kenya Securities Exchange. What is in store for the shareholders?
it's true. Umeme is listed on the Uganda Securities Exchange, but also cross-listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. And there are guidelines issued by the Capital Markets Authority and also USE and NSE. So what is clear is that we follow governance matters very seriously, and there's nothing that has been done, and we've not notified the authorities and also our shareholders. But like we said, after publishing all our financials, there's going to be an AGM, an annual general meeting, where our shareholders will be able to sit and make decisions on what next for the business.
I want the shareholders to first understand that, you know, there's a risk we take when we venture into a business. I hope these shareholders also understood that Umeme has a shelf life. That having been said, there are always arrangements. We have Uganda Capital Markets Authority, not so? Yes, part of its job is to protect people who invest, who buy shares. There are those arrangements. Part of this buyout amount might be able to ensure that people are not fleeced, people get back what they invested. But also, there are so many Uganda-owned or Ugandan organizations, institutions that are listed. Maybe they want to invest elsewhere. But also, for me, the hope I provide is that government also has listed companies like the New Vision. It is listed. Why shouldn't EDCL be listed as a long-term strategy to earn more? Now, those are conversations that can be gotten into, but I don't see if there are benefits in listing a company why EDCL shouldn't, because now we are looking at income-generating institutions for government, and this is one of the ways we can generate income by people paying for the power they utilize.